Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Independent District Commission Community Engagement Work Group meeting. This is the third time this group has met, and today's date is April 26, 2023. Before we get too far into it, I just want to go over some quick Zoom logistics with everybody. The meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the Commission's website tomorrow. We have we actually don't have closed captioning available tonight. I apologize. Well, there's closed captioning in the Zoom, but there are no American Sign Language or Spanish interpreters tonight. You can click on the button in the lower corner of your screen if you wanted to enable the closed captioning though. Commissioners, please change your chat settings to everyone so folks can see what y'all are saying. And community members can submit questions or thoughts through the Q&A function that you can find on your screen as well. The agenda tonight, at the beginning from 6 to 6:10, we're going to just do a quick introduction, cover the Zoom logistics, and then we're going to move into talking about the update to our work plan. That includes some information about District R trainings, listening sessions, and the community questions that the Community Engagement Work Group came up with, a survey that we created for that. We're then going to discuss some engagement documents, and that includes the community stakeholder list that our commissioners have, as well as our social media toolkit. We're then going to have a brief discussion about public hearings. Just an initial discussion on community engagement around those 8 July hearings that we have scheduled. And then next steps, figure out future meetings and choose somebody to report back to the full commission meeting that is in a week. A little less than that 1 week. And then we adjourn. So just to refresh everyone's memory, just need to turn something off really quick here on the big screen. This community engagement work group came up with 4 questions about community. The first one being, how would you define your community? Noting that there can be more than one. The second being, what physical places are most important to this community and where does this community gather? What geographic and physical boundaries are important to this community? Another way of wording that is, what are the physical boundaries of this community? And what should the commission know about your community and other communities in Portland when considering where to draw these boundaries?
Adam?
Yes.
Before we continue, if you could go back to the agenda, just pause for a moment for the commissioners to reflect on the agenda. And is there any other topics that we want to cover tonight?
This is Josh, Commissioner Laurenti. No additional topics, but I did see on the agenda, one of the items was to adopt prior meeting minutes, and I'm not seeing that on here. Do we need to do that before we go any deeper?
No, thank you, Commissioner Laurenti. We will discuss that at a further meeting. They weren't submitted to you, so we want an opportunity for you to review them. Thank you, sir. Any thoughts, reflections on any other topics?
Yes, I'm curious how this work intersects with our desire to approach communities of common interest more explicitly.
That's a great question. So can we discuss that in the next slide after when we pull up the questions? And then we're going to talk about a strategy coming up in the public hearing discussion as well. Commissioner Hanson, do you have anything, or Commissioner Kimura?
No, I assume when we go through the agenda, these engagement documents, social media, they will all be on the screen share? No, yes?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, any other items? If not, we'll go to the questions and then like an opportunity to tease out Commissioner Lumley's question. Okay, great. Adam, can you go to the next slide, please? Thank you, sir. So these were some of the questions that you all have asked for. And we're going to go through a few different strategies in the upcoming meetings. So these were the questions that you asked to be teased out for an upcoming session in May. Are there any other things that you want to add to this, Commissioner Lumley, before we talk about a couple strategies? One, it ties to the stakeholder list, and it also ties to the public, to a proposed meeting that is being proposed by the community, which are two different ways to take feedback from these questions that then will inform your decision making.
And just to kind of clarify for a point of context for Commissioner Lumley, we had originally had a list of about 15 questions that I think Commissioner Judd had drafted based on one of our, I think our first conversation. And these 4 had been like a distillation of those 15, the idea behind them being in as simple language as possible. What are sort of the bottom line questions that we want to pose to various communities across the city to discern how people, like what people's lived experience of community and community of interest is. So I don't know if we're still at the point of actually discussing the questions themselves. I think one of my hopes for this meeting is to talk about how we're actually spreading these questions and finding people to answer them. But that's sort of where I am at with
And just to jump in, we did not last full commission meeting, but 2 meetings ago, have a report back from the session where y'all came up with these questions, and the full IDC did have, hear these and agree with them for the most part, or entirely. So we're really focusing on how to ask folks these questions and get that information from communities from this point forward. That makes sense.
And Commissioner Hanson and Commissioner Lumley, just to clarify, there's a couple points that we're going to cover here where we're going to help you understand the different places that we're going to be asking these questions as an overarching strategy. Okay.
So these are questions we're going to be asking when we're working with the public, right? We're going to be asking them to respond to these questions. And yes. I was thinking about something that includes a little bit more of history and forward thinking. And I'm thinking of the recent news about the Albina investment, the $400 million, that is a very forward-looking initiative. And I'm not quite sure how to ask the question, but is there anything that we should know about upcoming developments or historical past that we should be aware of? I'm also thinking of the Coley district, where a group of nonprofit communities of color banded together and created a new TIF district. And so there's that as another example.
Commissioner Lumley, just to clarify, so can you tease out just a little bit what you mean by historical?
There might be something historical. I'm not quite sure. I know that, especially with the African American community and the Vanport flood,
right?
And I'm thinking of that. The Jade district, they were at least the business district appears to have been relocated from downtown to the 82nd Avenue area, but they still might have an interest in the downtown corridor, the Old Town area, for historical reasons. can't imagine us dividing that up, but at least the downtown corridor. But there has been some conversation about using 82nd Avenue as a dividing line, which I think cuts the J district in half.
I wonder if because I think those are like great examples of like communities that we want to hear from, and like groups of people that we want to have like many people from those communities answer these questions. So I wonder for Amber and Adam, I'm assuming that there will be a place later in the agenda where we will actually get to kind of brainstorm along the lines of what Commissioner Lumley is starting to talk about, of like the specific groups we want to hear from. Is that
yes. Yes, we'll be discussing the stakeholder list.
So it's not only historical, but it's also forward thinking too.
Yes.
Those are the two I know about, but there might be more I just don't know about.
That sounds great. Okay, Adam, apologies. Please proceed with the plan.
Yeah, so the Independent District Commission Engagement Plan. Some of y'all, you've seen this before. There's a few minor edits to it. We've already gotten through February and March. We're almost through April, which is great. Things are moving fast. And as we move into May, we have the IDC General Multilingual Toolkit, an IDC General Fact Sheet. And as we move into May, the big changes to it are the ones at the bottom that are bolded, the District R trainings, which we will be holding all month. And I will talk about those a little bit in a moment. And a community listening session that will happen before May 31st. And Sophia will talk a little bit about that. And this is really, both of these are ways to really do that community engagement work that we've been talking about, and really actively engaging folks, listening to what they have to say about their communities. And then the plan is the same that you've seen before. We have hearings in July, the public hearings, as well as doing some outreach to folks around the actual district plan that you release, and engaging people. And then August, of course, is the vote. And once the vote's done, we switch to education mode.
So, sorry, Adam, can you go back to the, thank you, sir. So, commissioners, what are your thoughts in terms of the overall engagement plan? Are there any things that we're missing? Do you approve of these, specifically of the updates? Sophia?
Sorry, just some transparent facilitation here. I think these folks have already seen this overall arching plan. I think maybe with the exception of Commissioner Lumley. I think what Adam and I wanted to walk through was the addition of the bolded last two rows, so the District R training and the community listening session potential strategy to get at the questions that we had talked a little bit earlier. So maybe we can present on those and then talk about the whole plan as a whole. Does that work? And then also another thing, Commissioner Judd, are you there? I know I think he might be having some problems with Zoom. Okay, I'll work on getting him on the meeting.
Okay. I do have a question about June, since I haven't heard until now that there might be events in June. Can somebody explain to me the plan? Thank you.
That was exactly the question that we have for you all. What we should focus our June.
Oh,
so that's towards the end of the yeah, exactly. Yeah, go ahead.
All right, so the District R trainings. And you can see some of the graphics that our communications team made for the social media toolkit. They might look familiar there. But these would be 1 hour trainings. We have two they're recurring meetings that happen. There's 2 every week. They are consistently going to be at noon on Fridays. So the 5th, the 12th, the 19th, and the 26th. And then we are doing weeknight evening training as well at 7 p.m. Once per week in the month of May. And those are falling at times when there isn't another commission meeting, engagement, work group meeting, or the two other commissions that are working on transition. So they fall on the 2nd, the 10th, the 16th, 27th, and 27th. All of these trainings are going to be via Zoom. They won't have the hybrid aspect to them, just because we're working with the platform District R, so folks will be on their computer, ideally, in theory, on their computer at home on Zoom, and be able to follow along with District R on their computer. The curriculum, it would be an educational presentation on getting folks caught up to speed that don't know all the details about the Independent District Commission, what you're scoped to do, where you're at in the process would be covered first. We would then engage folks in the trainings with a survey that is built from those questions that the community engagement work group decided upon, the 4 ones that we covered earlier, and really put people in the mindset of those questions before they start learning about how to use the mapping software, so they can think about what community is to them once they learn how to draw the map. Once they answer the survey, they would have that lens, and we would also have that information from folks. So we would have qualitative aspect of data that isn't a map, that is folks' thoughts, and we would be able to report those back to you as well. And we would then walk them through the District R mapping tool itself, show folks kind of the similar training to what y'all experienced from our consultants in the last meeting or the meeting before that, and just get folks up to speed and then give them the opportunity to make their own map. We would offer translation. It's provided as requested. So when we're putting this out into the community, we would emphasize the fact that if folks needed translation services, just to reach out and let us know, and we would be able to have folks listen along in their own language. And we would also be offering, when talking to some of those community stakeholders in the community stakeholder list, offering organizations and community groups the chance to have their own training, so to speak. So if there's an organization that wanted me to present a training to them, we could set up a time that works outside of the 7 p.m. or noon meetings on Fridays to have them learn all about it and talk about community. Let's pause right now for any questions that folks have about the kind of general format and the idea behind these trainings.
So I want some clarity.
Yeah.
So the District R training is done by our consultant?
It'd be done by me.
Oh, you would do, okay. So I have been talking to people already. So I want to make sure that if there is a specific organization that just, basically I'm giving them the general information, and that if you want more information, here's the website. And if you still are confused, I can come talk to you afterwards. But I think that I am not really competent in terms of the technical aspects of it. And so I'm just hoping that we can connect with you to actually give, say like the Somali American Council. There's a group of 7 different groups, and they might want to actually have a practice session so that you give them the training, and then they can take it to their people, and they all run around with their maps and their cursors. Is that what I'm understanding is going to happen, or can happen?
Yes, if there's ever a community organization that you want to, or a community group that you want to connect with one of these trainings, if you just do like an email intro with me, I can set up a time with their organization to do a training with them.
Okay.
And if it's,
thank you.
And if it's one that needs translation services, we could figure that out when scheduling it, and make sure that there's somebody there so so everyone can follow along.
Thank you.
Good question. So, just looking at the training, I'm just kind of curious about what are we prioritizing in terms of community engagement? Is it district R and being able to create maps, or is it getting feedback and common interest so that maps could be created in some way? So it may not be an or, it may be an and. I'm just kind of curious of how we prioritize.
So, Commissioner Judd, your audio was a little garbled. I didn't totally catch that question. Did anybody else?
I think I can recap. So the question that Commissioner Judd asked was, what are we prioritizing? Are we prioritizing District R or communities of interest? And then he indicated, or is it an and? And Commissioner Judd, we're going to walk through a couple other engagement opportunities that it's an and. However, this is a phased approach. So these are some of the activities that are occurring now at phase 1 in May, and then we're going to also talk about. We have a question about what do we do in June, and then we also want to talk about the hearings in July. Do you have a question, Commissioner Hanson?
I actually, the question that I was going to ask about District R was actually very similar to Commissioner Judd's question. And I think one of the things that I'm mindful of, and might just be a question for you, Adam, in these trainings is, I don't want someone to feel like they can't give feedback just because they don't have understanding or capacity to do like a full map of 4 districts. And so my encouragement would be, if people don't want to do the full map, they really don't have to, but instead the piece in district or where you can just indicate a particular community that you think that should stay together. I think that would be particularly useful. And then also this idea of like the survey with questions. So the more like qualitative data as well that perhaps is in response. Again, just thinking about accessibility, some people might feel more comfortable either answering questions, verbally or written, or just drawing like a particular community that they're especially concerned about. So I would even maybe prioritize that over the full 4 districts in all of Portland in the trainings. That's just my sense of things. And
yeah, for sure. Absolutely. And we would be covering the spatial data tool as well. So folks would have the ability to, do all 3 if they wanted. But if people do gravitate towards one particular aspect of the training, we would definitely encourage them to, if you really want to talk about community and not so much draw a map, please, take some extra time to fill out this survey and really hone in on what community is to you in a writing sense as opposed to a mapping sense. Any other? Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm going to try and go to one of these probably on the 12th, just so I can participate in one of them. I don't think people have to sign up. They just click a link on the web link. Is that right?
We will make them Zoom meetings as opposed to webinars, so everybody can just talk. So we would find a way to register folks to have them.
Do we have to register in advance, or do we just show up?
You can folks are welcome to just show up, but
okay. Thank you. So it's really focusing more on how to use the mapping tool. But if somebody wanted to offer information that it was really more like community of common interest, we would accept that. Is that correct?
Yeah, for sure. And it is a training, and we call it the District R training, but a big component of it is covering that survey as well. Make sure folks are speaking to what they, answering those questions so you can hear that feedback that the community engagement work group wanted to hear. Sophie.
Thank you.
Sophia.
Yeah, to Commissioner Lumley's questions about registration, Adam and I kind of went back and forth around this. The nice thing with having like a pre-registration is that we can explicitly ask there if folks need interpretation. And so we know that ahead of time and we're able to accommodate that. But then the downfall, right? Like folks have to register, and sometimes like if you're hearing about it last minute, so then the other side of that is like we have no registration and we just put it out there in the world like that if there is an language interpretation request, like that they let us know. So that's kind of like the hard part with that. And I would defer to this group to decide what they would want to do.
How about both?
Sorry.
Both? I mean, you could just show up, and if you need language interpretation, you just need to register in advance.
We can look into that, Adam. I can't remember exactly with Zoom registrations if you can have a registration and have the link public. I don't think so, but
to me, it's not important either way. I just want to have maximum participation, but if registration is the best way to do it, I support that. As long as it's well understood in advance, people need to register.
And I think there is a way that we could make it so folks could, if they are a last minute registration, that we do a last minute check, so to speak, before the training goes live to make sure everybody that is interested is able to participate.
Commissioner Lorente.
Yeah, thank you. I was just curious if there was a plan or if there will be report outs from these trainings to the commission, maybe similar to the way we receive public comment. I'm obviously the questions will be consolidated in the survey, and the maps will live on our homepage. But I'm just looking at this curriculum and thinking that you might hear some really good feedback directly from folks in these trainings, and I'm just wanting to make sure that we capture that and that gets reported back to the commission if at all possible.
For sure. We have planned on recording them, but also since it's the same method that we use to collect public comments, so we would be able to put together and highlight the kind of recurring themes like we do with the public comment report for you.
Commissioner Judd. I think you're muted. We're having, yeah.
Commissioner, press *6.
Is that better?
Yes.
Hey, that's great.
Cool. Sorry. During our last conversation with the broader team, we had a lot of confusion when it came to District R versus the other mapping tool. And so, as we know, District R is the only tool that we can use to save maps, but it is the tool that has the least amount of data in it that is necessary to create a map. And so so we have a District R training. How are we expected to avoid the same kind of confusion or be able to provide community members with the data to create a map in that other tools?
It's a great question. I mean, ideally, the training would be there to help walk folks through the mapping tools and allow them to use them to the best of their ability. Sophia, I know that you were there for the discussion, and I kind of just watched it in the aftermath. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so I think to that question I think you're right. There is a general confusion around these different two tools, and there's a lot of nuances within them. And so in the actual curriculum that we would be building as part of the training, we started sketching it out. And so we would be walking them through the different options available on our website around the mapping tool. So we would first go into like the one where you can view spatial data and look at all the data. So we would walk them through like, hey, here's the tool. literally like turn on the different like layers. This is how it works. Take a pause and then go, now this is option 2. You can look at data first, analyze data. And then here, if you want to submit a map, this is the other tool we have, and then walk them through how to work District R and what Commissioner Hansen was saying earlier. We'd walk them through. If you don't want to submit a map, you can just, identify a community, or you can submit a map. And then also as part of that curriculum, be like, ask them to tell us their why, which is what I had heard at the last full commission meeting.
So I just want to follow up real quick, because this is where it gets to this question around prioritization. The ability to, the numbers of times that we'll be able to go back and forth with the community to get to an outcome where they're actually providing us with the insight that we need, versus getting confused with the need to, or the opportunity to create maps. I'm just concerned that that when we begin to explain our maps, so let's say that if we don't prioritize, as we talked about the last time, the filters within that second tool, as a collective at IDC, to say that, look, these are some of the filters that we are interested in, and we've taken the time to kind of go through this and prioritize these. That is a great, I think, segue or lead-in to begin to engage communities. Say, hey, look, start with this. This will help you understand community boundaries, these common interests. It seems like it might get confusing if we do it as options, because then if we are prioritizing those layers, it's like, why are we not asking them to prioritize those layers, or at least vet those layers to make sure that we're on the right track?
I think I caught most of that. It was a little fuzzy at the beginning, but I think I'm catching on to what you're saying, that we should list out as maybe as part of the curriculum the different data layers that you all are considering, and explicitly sharing that. Is that described it accurately? Okay. I think we could easily do that as part of the curriculum, and that's pretty straightforward and easy for us.
Thank you. Adam, we have about 5 minutes we have a few more minutes.
Okay. Well, we can move along to
the listening sessions.
Yes, the community listening sessions.
Yes, so I'll present on this slide just because I've been talking to some folks a little bit more about this. So in our discussions over the last couple of weeks, we've heard that there's still a lot of communities that that you as a commission have not heard from and are looking for specific public comments on. And so we thought about the idea of hosting a community listening session to be able to get feedback on those 4 set of questions that you all identified, and really just, around the communities of interest. So we thought that we could host a community listening session around May 15th. That would give us enough time to, 1, do outreach to get folks to join the session, and 2, it would be before your meeting on May 17th. What we're envisioning this community listening session to look like would be a virtual event, community engagement event hosted on Zoom. It would be similar to our public hearings, where we would start with an educational presentation about the IDC's work to date, process, progress, etc. And then join small breakout groups on Zoom, where we would have a facilitated discussions with community members around those 4 set of questions. We'd have staff to help take notes. We've also have some folks, community volunteers that have offered to help us understanding our tight timeline. So the League of Women Voters of Portland has been following your work along, and they've reached out and shared that they would be more than happy to help either facilitate or take notes if you all would like them to. And then, of course, we'd love commissioners to join this potential session, but understanding that it is a little bit late notice for maybe potentially for some of them, but of course, it'd be more than welcome to join. And ideally, if they do join, or if you all can join, we would love it that at the end of after you are done discussing in small breakout groups, you join back to the full group and do a quick kind of report out on some of the key themes that your group discussed, or come to some of the key things you heard about. We'd have, of course, translation available as requested, and then the recording of the educational presentation only, not the breakout discussion, would be posted online along with the survey of the 4 questions that we would ask in the breakout rooms. So I'll pause there if there's any questions or any clarifications.
Commissioner Lumley?
Thank you, and I apologize for not using my raised hand earlier. I gotta get back into that habit. I'm interested in focusing on communities of common interest, and I'm not quite sure what this community listening session would do that would be different than what we would get if we had a regular public comment period during our regular IDC meetings. So would this be focusing more on communities of common interest, or is it just a community listening session?
We thought, and maybe a community listening session is not the right term for it, but really we thought you all could get more of a conversation out of it. Could be back and forth. You'd be hearing, it would be a small breakout room with about maybe 4 to 5 people, maybe up to maybe max 10, right? Where you could have a facilitated discussion around these communities of common interest, focusing the questions. The discussion would be guided by those 4 questions, but we could, of course, adapt that if that's all what you want. But I think it would be beneficial to hear from other folks and just having that back and forth. So I guess it is it's just more of more time really to be in an actual discussion.
The reason I bring this up is because I'm feeling like I need to get some specific public comments from very specific groups. The IRCO, the Immigrant Refugee Community Organization, they represent so many different groups, and I'm just not familiar with where they might be within the city geographically. The same with the Latino Network. They probably could offer some really helpful guidance about where their community currently resides and historical areas that are important to them. And the African American community, I'm aware of the Northeast area, but there might be more that I'm not aware of. And of course, Apana would be great to hear from as well. And they represent a group that's broader than just the downtown area, Old Town, and J District. And so I just want to make sure that we're not missing something. And so if we could get some really targeted outreach to these groups, either at this community listening session or at even the meeting, a regular IDC meeting on the 17th.
Okay, yeah, I'm hearing that. Maybe in response to that, yes, we totally could do targeted outreach to get folks to join these sessions. That's totally an option, and happy to do that. I think another option too, if we want to scratch this potential idea, is instead staff could focus their time on doing targeted outreach to a list of stakeholders that you all identify for us, and we can ask them those set of questions. And of course, you all would be welcome to join those meetings. Actually preferred, but understanding that we want to be able to get you as much feedback as possible before the end of May.
I'm fine with the meeting on the 15th if it's going to get to that targeted question we have about communities of common interest. It could be, if it's not there, then let's try to do it at the regular IDC meeting on the 17th. I'm ready to support whatever you think is best here. Thank you.
I'm having a hard time getting to my hand raised, so I apologize if I'm stepping on anybody. But just to follow up with that, there will be key organizations that we should have kind of one-on-ones. So is that something that we should be looking for staff members to organize, or is that something that I think we've raised this question before? How do we, if we have them individually, how do we get capture the information to bring it back to the IDC in a coherent, transparent manner?
Yeah, I think staff would be happy to coordinate that. So, but I think what we would need is agreement on what those groups are and who those stakeholders are because of our limited capacity. So, and then, so we can do outreach, right? To if we agree on a set of specific groups or stakeholders we want to do outreach to, staff can start doing that targeted outreach to have a one-on-one discussion. Staff can join and have those discussions. We can obviously ask commissioners to join those discussions. We can track the notes, compile them, and report that out at the full commission. And then, of course, we're welcome if the other commissioners are doing outreach to other groups, like we can coordinate that as well and support those meetings.
Yeah, so I have an upcoming for the Indian Leaders Roundtable meeting on, I forget what day, like May 8th or something. So I invited Sophia to that. It's not a public hearing, but we're likely to get some feedback from them.
Commissioner Hanson.
Thank you. Yeah. So to bring it back to the community listening session, I think this is a nice idea. I think for people who maybe don't want to like go on record giving public testimony, but who still want to have their voices be heard, I like the idea of the breakout format. I'm wondering if I know that League of Women Voters had offered to co-sponsor or to kind of co-host this. I'm wondering if we should invite another co-host, for example, I don't know, like Coalition of Communities of Color or something like Apano, like if another group has expressed interest in either co-hosting this session or co-hosting like another listening session, just again, so we're not like kind of picking favorites of like community groups to be like co-hosting. And then when we get to the conversation about the community stakeholder list, I think as we do outreach to the folks on the community stakeholder list, I see this community listening session as like one of multiple ways that we're inviting people to engage. So maybe the ask is like encourage your membership to come to this community listening session, submit public testimony, or have a one-on-one meeting if you want. But yeah, and then I think a related question to what had been said just before in terms of like how we're sharing back feedback from those one-on-one meetings. Adam, I know you had sent out a SurveyMonkey link to the whole commission, I believe on Friday. And I had replied to that and was wondering how, like if that is the format through which we want to individually as commissioners share feedback that we have heard from various groups, and if so, what the mechanism is for sharing that back out to the larger commission. So maybe now is not the moment to address that question, but would love to address it at some point.
Commissioner Judd.
Yeah, just to follow up on that. So as we talk about listing posts and these other opportunities for communities to get feedback, I guess, this was expressed earlier as well. I just want to make sure that, are we talking about form versus function? Because if the objective is similar, but we have different names for them, like there's a listing post, and then there are outreach that we are doing individually to get feedback from groups. And, perhaps we would be reaching out to the same folks. Is there a way to coordinate, again, the list of organizations that we all collectively feel like would be vital? And when we think about vital, what we're talking about is groups that are going to represent, in my mind, the groups that are most on the fringes, that to get their feedback and make sure they're included, as well as the broader community stakeholders. I think one of the things that ultimately we all may be concerned with is that once we decide on these maps, if it goes to a hearing and one of these groups has not been heard or not been approached, it's going to impact the process and in some ways deem the process to be inequitable. And so it'd be good to sort of, I think for the IDC in itself, to gather this list, publish this list, and be really clear and concise about what it is that we're looking forward to getting from each one of these organizations. And I do think that working with them and giving them the individual voices as hosts, or however we may want to call it, will be very, very important to do.
So before I go to you, Commissioner Lumley, what I hear from multiple commissioners is that when we go through the stakeholder list, part of it is reviewing the list. And the other part of what I heard from Commissioner Hanson has to do with what are the types of tactics that we're using with that list, and also how we're using the commissioners. And so the tactics are everything from specific testimony to one-on-ones to even district R. Is that right, Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, I mean, I thought my thought is when we reach out to any community stakeholder, the invitation could be to engage in sort of a suite of different ways. It's kind of like have your option of how you can share feedback with us, but we would like to hear from you in one of these ways or multiple.
Got it. Commissioner Lumley?
Thank you. I like the idea of having the Coalition Communities of Color host a session. I think that would be very helpful, and they could organize and make sure the outreach is there, and so we have good feedback from them. I'm struggling right now just getting their attention because there's a heavy amount of advocacy with the state legislative process and the city and county budget processes. There's a lot of advocacy. So perhaps the July session might be good for the Coalition Communities of Color. I could ask the person to coordinate with, I'll send you the contact information of the person to coordinate with, Sophia, but you probably already know them.
Actually, I beat you. We have a meeting on Friday to talk about culturally specific engagement. So I can ask them on Friday.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Great. Can we move on to the next slide? We're running a little bit behind. Sophia, were you going to cover this?
I think Adam was, but
oh, sorry, I was unmuting. I muted the room because there was a baby crying in the hallway. I apologize. I started talking and forgot because I have two computers. Yes, so stakeholder list. We sent out a community stakeholder list to the community engagement work group before the meeting, and we wanted to go over how, and we've covered this a little bit already, how we want commissioners to engage with the stakeholder list. And the time frame is covered here. It's May 3rd through May 31st that we're going to be doing a lot of this engagement, and discuss a little bit what other materials are needed as far as fact sheet. We have a fact sheet, email templates, and social media content. So with the stakeholder list, we can start with that and how we want commissioners to engage with the stakeholder list, as well as the list itself for the topic, the kind of buckets, so to speak, of different community groups that are represented in the different tabs on the list, as well as the people and organizations in each of those.
So, commissioners, before we get into the collateral materials, has everyone had an opportunity to review the stakeholder list? No.
Maybe I can give a quick context for the folks that haven't, but Marta, Commissioner Hanson, go ahead. Oh, you're muted. You're muted.
I was going to reply to the question, but go ahead and give context. Sorry.
Oh, go ahead. If you know, go ahead.
I mean, so my thought, well, if anyone has not looked at the list, I believe it was the one included in Adam's email to the whole commission on Friday. Is that correct? So my idea, and I'm very open to pushback, what I would love is to basically do a list review and have, like Commissioner Lumley and I as incoming co-chairs, I'm happy, or I can take it on, like email every commissioner and ask them in advance of next Wednesday's meeting, read through this list, and we can like add an additional column that's like, do you have a personal relationship with someone in leadership at this organization and are willing to reach out to them, and actually have like every single person on the commission go through and say, like, Commissioner Lorente is on the board of Next Up, like, he can reach out to them, you know, so and so is on, like, has a close relationship with Common Cause, like whatever. And then, and like the ask would be like, do the list review and write your name next to organizations you have relationships with, and then indicate, and then basically the ask is like, send them this template email, you know, personalize it, of course, but send them this template email that says, hey, I'm on this commission. We want your organization's feedback. Will you please, you know, and then that's where the template email comes in. Will you please extend the invitation to the community listening session, extend the invitation for giving public comment, extend the invitation to these districtor trainings, and or would you like to have a one-on-one meeting with me or the staff? And just like say, you know, we need you to do that by, I mean, maybe even we say like by the end of Sunday night, like if we email that out, you know, tomorrow, by the end of Sunday night, and then or by next Wednesday's meeting, and then maybe the ask is that by the end of next week, all of these emails have gone out, and then between Commissioner Lumley and I, we can personally email everybody on the stakeholder list who has not gotten an email from, who like doesn't have a point person on the commission, just so like everybody gets a personal touch. That's my thought, having done a lot of list reviews in previous lives, but I'm also open to other people's opinions and thoughts.
Other commissioners?
I like the suggestion of having the personal touch. I worry about if we do the personal touch first and then a commissioner doesn't follow through. It might be easier to send it to everybody and then just encourage the commissioners to jump in and say, hey, you got this email. This is really important. I also, you know, I'm new to this committee, so I'm just looking at this document for the first time, so I apologize. I've been going through it, and I do notice that there's some updates. I don't know if you want me just to jump in and start updating in the document or send updates by email. How would you like to proceed with that?
Yes, I think there's definitely some outdated information and folks there. So I think as part of that list review, as Commissioner Hanson suggested, like we would ask folks to update it. Adam, I can't remember how you sent the information, if it was a live document or if it was an actual attachment to the email.
They should have editing privileges for it. If they don't.
Okay, then yeah, you can go ahead and make those edits right there and then.
Thank you.
Encouraged and appreciated.
Any Commissioner Judd, Commissioner Laurenti, do you like this idea? Are you comfortable with it?
I do like the suggestion put forward by Commissioners Hanson and Lumley. I think it would be easier to just send out one template listing out the different ways folks can engage, and then you know, individual commissioners can put a personal touch to make sure we're hearing back from certain groups. But as described, this sounds great to me.
Okay, so I might just make sure I'm hearing this correctly. Ask folks to maybe review an update maybe by the end of this week, just to make sure we have the right stakeholders or any additional stakeholders we might be missing. And then for staff to do like the initial outreach. And then for commissioners to identify who they're going to do the targeted follow-up outreach to. Is that correct?
Yes. And then the only other thing is that in the email would be like the suite of outreach options that they can pick from. And then just as a follow-up to that, are there any other things that you think would be needed as part of the communications around this stakeholder list?
I'm just curious. So when the staff sends it out, will the entire commission be CC'd?
Trying to think about that. So yeah, I think that could be done. It could get a little messy though, if I'm being honest, because there's a lot of emails on there. So I would send a few batches of emails.
When you send that big list out to everybody, it'll be like blind copy, right? And
that's what I was thinking. It is though nice to get a little bit of a more personalized message. but yes, that's what, if you all want the commissioners to be CC'd in the email, I would then suggest that I blind copy all the organizations.
So you, now we're trying to get the maximum impact here. One method is you could blind copy everybody one mass email, and then commissioners could go through the list and say, hey, you got this email. We really want you to pay attention to this.
You mail merge in Outlook?
I don't know.
Oh, I don't think so.
I'm happy to strategize the logistics of this offline.
Okay.
Maybe like Commissioner Lumley and Sophia, we can put our heads together.
Yeah.
Because my other thought is, I feel like I don't know, my sense is like an ask to the whole commission to actually do this should either come from the co-chairs or the community engagement working group. I don't know what folks think about that.
So point of clarification, Commissioner Hanson. So do you mean in the body of the email?
No, I'm like letting the rest of the commissioners know that we're making this ask of them.
Okay, got it.
I do have to send today your meeting agenda and material agenda for next week. I could add it as part of that email, or if the new co-chairs want to send that, if you want to send a separate email with this ask, that can be that too.
Why don't you include it in the email that you're going to send out as like one of the kind of points of order to be aware of, and then we can follow up?
I think that might be better. Just like, hey, do your initial review and identification by this day, and then co-chairs will follow up, or there'll be some follow-up, something along that line. Okay, that can be done.
Back to the spreadsheet, there's the very last tab, additional stakeholders. What is that tab for? Oh, I think you're saying you've already emailed two toolkits on March 17th. Is that what that is?
So folks in the other tabs have been emailed toolkits as well. That was a list that was kind of a catch-all that didn't necessarily fall into any of the buckets. It was okay. A lot of this data was actually compiled when engaging for actual charter reform. So it was a list that we were working off prior.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, any other points, or should we move on? Okay, I think we can move on.
All right, so the media toolkit, that was the other document that we sent out. It is currently being translated into Spanish, Somali, Russian, Vietnamese, simplified Chinese, and traditional Chinese. And these were, you can see on the screen here, some of the graphics. They might look familiar. They were the social media graphics that we put into the toolkit itself, so folks that receive it can spread the word on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. And our question to pose to y'all is anything missing from the toolkit after reviewing it?
Commissioner Hanson?
My one edit is on the one on the bottom right to change it to the May dates. But other than that, looks great.
And I believe that we've added future dates to the toolkit as well. So we can delete out the old ones as the days pass. Any other?
Commissioner Hanson, are you looking at the screen share or the document that was in the calendar invitation?
The screen share.
The document that's in the calendar invitation has May dates.
Okay, sorry, that was my mistake.
That was my mistake. I added the wrong image. There's the May dates.
Any other comments? All right, Adam?
I'll be sure to let the comms folks know that you love the graphics. And so moving on to public hearings. Just a quick recap, educational materials, there's printed fact sheet, toolkit for public hearings and education presentation. The location is that they are hybrid. They're going to be in hosted spaces such as schools or libraries, and outreach around them. I know the commission has discussed some paid ads, but also earned media and flyers. So questions to y'all, what is the focus of engagement during the month of June? What do we expect commissioners to do during June? How do you want staff to spend their time during June? And should we expect commissioners to attend all 8 hearings?
And maybe let's start with the first question. Sorry,
so
Commissioner Lumley.
The first question was what to do in June.
Yes.
I kind of feel like behind the scenes before this whole process started that somebody put together this really great schedule working backwards from September 1, and I really appreciate that. And there was nothing there for June. I don't know how we can support staff to get ready for the public hearings. Maybe that's something we could do. I don't think we need to have public meetings, but because I don't think there's going to be any decisions to make. But I think it really comes down to is how can we support the staff, I would think, and ensure we have great turnout for the public hearings in July. What was envisioned for the month of July? I don't think that it was envisioned that we would do nothing, but there's been really a lot of conversation about what we should do or what we could do.
Yeah, I can share a little bit more. So when I created your overall timeline, I left June with no public meetings intentionally, right? Because the plan would be released on June 1st. And then reason two was to give you all a little bit of break because July was a little crazy with all the public hearings, but really it was because leading up to the hearings, we want to get as many folks, right? And as much as public comment and testimony. And so we thought that the focus of June would be around community engagement. And so I think maybe a better way to frame it is like, how do you all as a commission want staff to spend their time engaging folks around the district plan and the public hearings? So like are there maybe potential other community engagement strategies or events or things that we could do in June to get folks to come to the hearings and submit feedback to you all?
Commissioner Camara.
Let me put my hand down first because otherwise I'll forget. Okay. I actually have already started. My community is not quite as, I think, aware of all of the different pieces of this redistricting. So I have asked different groups how do they want to have the information? And I expect they're going to get back to me, and that will determine whether I go out and talk to them, whether you, as staff, have something to present. I just don't know because we don't have, there's two things. It isn't that our community doesn't care, but sometimes they don't know that they should. We have a lot of people who are not voting members. And so I need to make sure that it's important that we hear their voice as well. Because a lot of times if they say, well, you have to be a voter to make, I said, no. This affects all of you, so please think about how I can help you. If I can give you extra information, so that you can go to the public hearing and make something, or you can look at the mapping tool and actually make some sense out of it if you wanted to, and then comment on the proposal that the commission comes up with, and you can comment intelligently. But it's going to take me longer, so I don't know that for me June is blank. June is basically going to start filling up with, why shouldn't the UMN who live way in Southeast Portland care? What makes it important for them to care? I have a bunch of people from the Federated States of Micronesia. They're all over East Portland. They're not in a group. I see them at other things, and that's when I talk to them. What I also wanted to ask is, are these considered public outreach meetings, and therefore do I have to keep a record of it? Because I don't know.
Sophia?
Yeah, I think to answer the last question, Commissioner Kimura, you're not required, like legally required to like document all these, but as the commission had discussed earlier in our full commission meetings about tracking your engagement and communications, and in this group, we had sent a engagement tracking form for commissioners to track like who they're chatting with. I think we talked about this a little bit at the last community engagement committee too. So using that online form to track who you talk to, and then in generally recapping like their feedback, so that then staff can do report on that to the full commission.
Thank you.
Commissioner Lorente, I thought I saw your hand up. No?
Yeah, I'm not really sure how to respond to this, but like I'm just thinking about, you know, so June 1st, we put out a set of maps, and I imagine from that point, we're going to see some increased engagement from the public once we put those maps out. And that's going to coincide with a period of time when we as a commission will not be meeting. So I'm wondering, I don't know that we need to meet to review public comment. I'm just anticipating that we're going to get much more public comment through the month of June. And I want to make sure that we are all taking time to like reflect on that and think about that and carry that information with us as we approach the July engagement. So I don't know that doesn't really answer, what should commissioners or staff do for the month of June, but I'm just, anticipating that uptick in engagement and how we want to engage with that feedback that we might be getting. So, yeah.
Good point. Commissioner Judd?
Yeah, just so when the maps come out in early June, and then we know that we're going to head into a period in July with a lot of training engagement. It seems like that's probably an ideal time to, I don't know how we do this, but define what we mean by community of interest. I think right now we use that term, and I'm not sure if even within the IDC, we all have a clear definition of what that means. And I'm just wondering if in June, once the map comes out and we begin to emphasize that this is why we're coming to the community, is to get a better understanding of how they define these communities, those questions that we've already kind of developed. Is there something that we can do to emphasize, to continue to communicate, to define that term and how we expect to use it?
So, Commissioner Judd, before I move on to you, Commissioner Lumley, so just a point of clarification, what I hear Commissioner Judd saying is, how do we take the information that we're getting in June as a feedback loop around the communities of interest, and will that will be, I'm assuming, analyzed as part of the work that then is presented in July?
So So you're saying we're going to analyze that in July? So if we've had, as an IDC, several meetings on, I'm still not sure if we collectively have an understanding. Is there some way in which, whether it's the looking at these layers, whether it's the questions that we've had developed already, is there a way that we can begin to communicate the importance of this, defining this community interest, and that's kind of what we're trying to do in some kind of intentional way, so that when we get to the community engagement meeting, there is at least a primed understanding of communities of interest and what the IDC is kind of looking for, as opposed to, and maybe it's best to come with no predefined, no primed definition, and just do a kind of free for all. I'm not sure. I just want to make sure that we don't get to that point and we're starting with an assumption that we didn't have to break down, and it changes in each session that we have in July because we didn't start with something that's kind of preformed.
So just a follow-up question, and then I'll jump to Commissioner Lumley. So based on the strategy that has been laid out thus far, we would get some of that information in the listening session, possibly in the District R, and then Commissioner Lumley recommended encouraging specific groups to then provide feedback at the meeting, I believe on the 17th. And then also that could be part of the email strategy in the language of the email.
Yeah, I understand. All I'm asking is that, can we synergize that in a way in June? So that when we have, as we go through all those pieces, there's something that people can go to and say, okay, got it. Yes. This is the collective work that they've done. This is a prep for us to go into July with.
Yep. Yes. Commissioner Lumley. You're on mute, sir.
Dang, mute button. So I'm going to recommend that in addition to whatever we're going to do in June, that we also have a strong focus on media, social media, print media, TV. This is something that's really a once in a lifetime opportunity to create new districts. After this, every 10 years based on the census data, it can be tweaked, but it's going to be, this is huge. It's historic for the city of Portland to have new districts created, and we need the public's engagement. We could even offer an op-ed of some kind in the Oregonian, although op-eds are not often read by the public, but they are read by people who care about op-eds and who do represent communities. So, I don't read them all, but I do read a lot of them though, and I've done op-eds before. They are a lot of work, and even though you go through the whole thing of writing it, doesn't mean that the Oregonian will even publish it. So it is a lot of work, and it could be something that is generally authored by the co-chairs if people are interested.
Great idea. Commissioner Hanson?
As someone who reads op-eds, I think that's a great idea.
Great idea.
Commissioner Lorento, I saw you laughing too. So I think we've got some op-ed readers in this room. I think I love that idea, and yes, I think that's a great way to spend June. I think it was Commissioner Manjarrez in one of the previous meetings also made the suggestion of thinking about kind of community specific media outlets. So yes, the Oregonian is one, probably Willamette Weekly is one, but I'm sure there are a bunch of other either neighborhood specific or community specific outlets and publications. Maybe it's print, maybe it's online, maybe it's podcasts, maybe it's like radio, you know. And so perhaps that could be something that like we could have some format of commissioners kind of saying what they know, or maybe that could be a question when we're going out and having these one-on-one conversations like Commissioner Kimura was talking about, like how does the Somali community kind of get their news, right? And then how do we place something in that outlet sometime in June? So I think that's a great, I love that. To the question, one of the questions we haven't addressed yet on this slide is, should we expect commissioners to attend all 8 hearings? I don't know if everyone will be able to attend all 8. My sense is like maybe like at least 4, like at least half of them. Maybe the recommendation is between 4 and 8. And I would also want to make sure that we have at least, I don't know, 6 commissioners at each hearing, right? At least some number of commissioners at each hearing. So perhaps we can also like make a just like Google spreadsheet of like whatever Excel spreadsheet of like who's available on which days, so we can make sure that we have like a respectable number of commissioners at each meeting.
I love that idea. You know, I have great aspirations of attending all of them, but I don't think I'm going to attend a Saturday and a Sunday, but I might attend one or the other. And I think you're right, Commissioner Hanson, that making sure that we have good representation from commissioners will be awesome. But it is 8 meetings, 8 hearings in the space of about 11 or 12 days. It's pretty quick.
It's kind of a ridiculous, crazy timeline. That was the only way we could get a weekend and weekday option in each of the proposed districts within your timeline. So if you all we could revisit those dates if you think they're too close to each other. There's not a lot of wiggle room, if I'm being honest.
I think it's fine. I'm just saying the reality is I don't know if we're going to find very many commissioners that are going to be willing to go to a public hearing on a Saturday and another one on a Sunday.
Absolutely.
So if you can just try to get everybody to at least attend one weekend event.
And so would you all be okay if we as staff asked folks to sign up for the hearing and like cap them how many folks can sign up per hearing? And are we going to should we ask folks to join at least one hearing in each district? Or should that not be a requirement?
That would be really handy if we all did that at least one district. Sorry, I jumped in. Commissioner Rente, go ahead.
No. I was just thinking, maybe, I don't know if we have to specify this, but maybe we would say like you have to attend a hearing that is in your part of Portland, right? Like if you live in Northeast, you go to that hearing, and maybe you go like maybe a couple in your district. You go to the 2 in your district and then 2 outside of your district or something like that might be helpful. I don't know.
Great idea. I think Commissioner Judd was next, and then Commissioner Kimura.
Yeah, it's a great idea. The only issue would be with a cap. If you ask folks to sign up in advance and you have a cap, if someone needs to cancel later, then you might want it being short. I'm just thinking of my own personal schedule there. I would likely, like everyone else, want to sign up for as many as I possibly could. With my awareness of the schedule now, but something will happen, and I'd hate for a commission not to be able to attend because my schedule for it.
Thank you. Commissioner Kimura?
Now, I am assuming that this is going to be an in-person outreach effort?
Yes, so there'll be hybrid, in-person and virtual.
So my question then is, because I take the bus, I would be willing to go to a meeting in North Portland virtually, but I don't think I can appear physically. And that's really kind of, for me, an issue. I can go to 2 others that are outside of what ostensibly might be East Portland, but I also think that doing a virtual meeting in the far Southwest or in Northwest might be something I'm willing to do rather than commit to physically going someplace when I know that I'm not sure I can get back in time or there's a bus or whatever. I thought I would be clear about that, that is my limitation. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Commissioner Hanson.
I was just gonna, Commissioner Kamara, I think that's a really great flag. And I actually think it would be great to have at least one commissioner joining virtually for all of the public hearings, just so the people who are joining virtually have somebody to like talk to virtually, if we do breakouts or something.
Commissioner Lumley?
Thank you. I wouldn't put a cap on how many commissioners can attend the meetings. I would encourage at least a minimum number. 4 sounds good. At least 4, and try to attend at least 1 in person and 1 virtually. Try to cover at least 1 weekend date. I like your suggestion, Sophia, also of at least try to get into as many different districts as you can.
Great idea. Are there any other items on the public hearings? We have about 4 minutes left. Yes, sir.
No, my hand needs to come down, sorry.
Okay. Any other thoughts? Okay. Moving on.
So next steps, just a reminder that the meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the commission's website. This is a shorter one, so it takes less time to render and will be up a little bit quicker. And we are also just looking for a volunteer to help report out at the Wednesday, May 3rd full commission meeting. And it's something where we will, get the information to you ahead of time with slides and some talking points that you can edit after reviewing the minutes from the meeting and the recording and everything. So you can just do a quick summary to the full group. Any volunteers?
I volunteer as tribute.
Thank you, Commissioner. We appreciate that. And then, sorry, before I hit meeting adjourned, does anybody have any last thoughts or concerns? I did want to ask, are folks good with the kind of pace that we're having these community engagement meetings, community engagement work group meetings? We've kind of towards the end of the month, the week before the full commission meeting. Does that work for when I send out times for our next one? Unless I just wanted to check to make sure people didn't want kind of a midpoint. How's all of this outreach going since we're doing heavy engagement in the month of May?
So you've been meeting essentially monthly?
Yes.
That's fine with me.
This is our 3rd. We had one that was the week before the February meeting, the week before the last meeting in March for the full commission, and then I guess the week before the beginning of May, but the weeks are a little weird.
Yeah, I think that's generally fine. Maybe we can commit to like a check-in via email or something early in May, just because I was like pretty disappointed by the lack of public comment at the last meeting, which to me was an indication that we like haven't been effectively reaching out to people to have them come in and share their thoughts. So I think with this plan that we have of having everybody review the stakeholder list, doing the really personal outreach with the invitation of multiple ways to engage, like hopefully that will start to build some more engagement. And maybe we can all just check in at some point via email on like how things are going, or if staff has like questions for us that feedback would be helpful on or anything, just so we can keep it moving forward. just because I really do feel like this is like a critical time. And we like want to do it well.
I'm glad you brought that up. I was thinking, or sort of contemplating during this meeting, about how we can get more public engagement at our regular IDC meetings. And we had great turnout when we had a specific question, the one posed by Commissioner Manuarez. And if we have a focused discussion, say at the May, I think it's 16th meeting, on communities of common interest, and it's just as an example, if we want to hear from that, I think you're going to get more feedback, because most of the people that want to testify generally have already done so. But if we had something specific we want to get feedback on, I think we'll get more engagement. So after saying that, what other kinds of focused conversations do we want to have through public comment? And maybe that's something we can talk about at the meeting next Wednesday.
Okay, I have it down.
Awesome.
Any other, for the good of the order, it's exactly 7:30.
Best facilitator ever, ended right at 7:30.
Commissioner Judd, final thoughts?
Just wanted to thank the team again. Everything is more motivated. Much appreciated.
It sounded like it was something good you were saying, Dwayne, but I couldn't hear what you said.
Yeah, I'm so sorry, guys. My voice, the electronics, and outside is really good.
We can hear you now.
But I just wanted to thank you guys for doing a great job of pulling us together, making sure that everything is well noted, and keeping us moving. So really do appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you all. Good night.
Yeah, all right. Thanks, everybody. Have a great
everyone.
night.